Yeah, we are live now.
Welcome back to Cyber Talk with Cyber GRC, where we decode compliance and simplify regulation and bring clarity to India's evolving digital landscape. Today's episode is a big one. The government has officially notified the DPDP rules, and several of them, rule number 1, 2, 17 to 21, are effective and immediate. What does that mean for organization? It means your legal definition, your notice, your consent mechanism, your grievance workflow all need an align starting today. No transition period, no waiting, and nothing. In this episode, we'll break down the rule in simple language, explain what had changed overnight, and tell you what business must start doing right now. If you are a data fiduciary or part of GRC community, you absolutely cannot miss this episode. So let's begin with my first question: is what exactly happened with DPDP rules recently, and why is everyone talking about immediately effectiveness?
Yeah, so that's a very good question to start with, Vidya. So if you see on my screen, these are the three phases in which the act is supposed to be rolled out, right? So if you see the phase number one, okay, we have immediate enforcement, where on 13th of November, already these rules are enforced. For example, rule number one, which talks about the rules which are there that are enforced. Rule number two, which talks about some definitions, legal definitions. Rule number 17 to 21, data protection board setup and functioning. All these rules are already, enforced. What these rules will cover? Rule number one will decide which rules will be brought into force. Rule number two will be giving the legal meaning to for terms such as verifiable consent, techno legal measures, user account, consent manager, etc. Right? And similarly, rules number 17 to 21 will talk about appointment of a DPO, salaries, meetings, procedures, digital functioning, and staffing of the data protection board. Okay. Now, what organizations must prepare for? That is the question. So, for rule number, the phase number one, which is rule number one, two, and 17 to 21. In nutshell, the organizations have to make sure that they align the internal policies with the official legal definitions, which are already out there now, and begin the DPDP readiness by conducting trainings, creating policies, having proper governance around the DPDP Act. These are some of the things that the organization must prepare for. Okay, and understanding that the enforcement body, the data protection board, is being established now. Okay, and start early preparation for notices, consent, breach processes. Okay, so this is where the organization have to start working now. Similarly, we have the phase number two also, what the organization must prepare for, and phase number three also. So this is a good a screenshot that anybody can take out there, and they can leverage this for their own convenience. So yeah, so this is why this is being discussed now. This is why we are discussing this with you, because phase number one is already started, right?
Hmm. Okay, इससे पहले कि हम आगे बढ़े, I would like to tell my audience that they can feel free to comment and ask any question related to this topic or whatever they have question related to GRC. So, guys, please comment and please ask question if you have any. Okay, so our next question is that why this rule 1 and 2 is so important and what are they?
So rule number one basically talks about which are the rules which are declared, and when are the rules starting, which are the rules that are starting immediately, right? All these things are covered by the rule number one. However, rule number two defines the key terms. What are the key terms? For example, if you do not understand the key terms, it will become an issue for the organization, right? So now, rule two has clearly defined some terms like data fiduciary, who is a data processor, who is a consent manager, who is a user, All these rules are now defined, all these terms are defined now. So because these are the foundational definitions, with their immediate enforcement means now organization must start interpreting these DPDP terms correctly from today, from the date of inception itself, right? So any incorrect understanding can now lead to compliance errors or audit issues later on. Okay.
Okay. Okay, Manish is asking, is CISO is responsible for DPDPA?
So Manish is asking a very good question, and I think everybody who is watching must be thinking about the same question that Manish is asking about. That is CISO, because all the organizations, many organizations, I would say most of the organizations have CISOs, right? Who are basically taking care for information security within the organization, and so is CISO responsible
Can
for the
you tell a little
DPDP?
more about CISO? What's that?
Yeah, CISO is Chief Information Security Officer. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So basically, CISO is responsible for any information security related issues within the organization, right? So they are in charge of security. Okay. So now he's asking whether CISO is responsible for DPDP Act or not. So complying with the DPDP Act, okay, and making sure that the organization has the right set of policies, right set of technological enforcements, right set of understanding about the DPDP Act. Definitely, I think CISO has to play a role in that. It is not that CISO should not oversee the implementation of this act. Okay, definitely it falls under the CISO's purview. However, direct implementation of this act will be coming under a role of a data protection officer, DPO. Okay, but a company, if they do not have a DPO, if they do not have a legal or compliance team, then definitely CISO would have to see how exactly this can be accomplished. Okay, so this is the answer, Manish.
Thank you so much, Manish, for your question. Anybody like Manish have a question? Feel free to ask any question. My next question till then is, what do Rules 17 to 21 cover, and why did the government choose these to go live right now?
This is a very good question, actually. Why only these rules to go live now? Why not the other rules? What is the difference? So basically, rules number 17 to 21 actually create the foundation, the groundwork for real enforcement, if you see. So rule number 17 actually activates the notice requirement. For example, what are the requirements of the notice? That the notice that you will give to the data principals. Rule number 18 actually activates the valid consent principle, that you need to have a valid consent in place. Now organization have to start preparing consent mechanisms. Okay, rule number 19 mandates the grievance redressal. Okay, for example, if any data principal is not happy, there has to be a grievance redressal mechanism into play. Okay, rule number 20 basically enables filing complaints to the data protection board. So now all this is basically enabling the board's digital functioning. Okay, and giving the data principals their
Hmm.
rights now. So the government has chosen these to go live immediately, so that actual enforcement begins now. Okay, companies must comply with the notice, consent, and grievance duties. Users can file complaints, and the board can educate and impose penalties from day one. That is the reason why it is enforced.
What does complaint can be filed right away mean for companies?
So when we say complaints can be filed right away, it means that the data protection board is fully operational under these live rules which have come. Okay, if users feel that data was mishandled or not handled properly, whether due to any missing notices from the organization, any misleading consent practices, or any ignored rights of the data principals, or because of any data breach, or poor handling of their data, they can now directly approach the Data Protection Board of India after first raising the issue with the data fiduciary. Now they have that option enabled. Okay, so that is where it comes into play. Since rule number 19 on grievance redressal is already in force, so every company must now have a working grievance mechanism and a DPDP assigned
Okay.
aligned contact person as well. and a process to close complaints within a reasonable time, because escalation to the board can happen immediately after this if the companies fail to do so.
And how does immediate enforcement impact breach handling?
So, under the DPDP Act and its rules, from the moment rules number 17 to 21 came into force, Vidya, the infrastructure for enforcement, okay, the data protection board, the complaint mechanism, the penalty mechanism, all is live now. Okay, this means that now if a data breach happens, okay, the data principals and the company, the company has a data breach and it harms the data principal because of the data breach. Okay, so companies, for example, is not able to maintain safeguards. Okay, and this basically now can be actually effectively investigated by the Data Protection Board of India now, and they can impose penalties now. So that is in place. Okay, and the
Okay.
full detailed timeline rules for breach notification and all are still phased out, rolled out. However, the key obligations around safeguards and liability for mishandling breaches are already enforceable. Okay, so we need to be
Hmm.
very careful about these things. Yeah.
What are the penalties under rule number 19?
So rule number 19 is very important, okay? Because rule number 19 makes the grievance redressal mandatory, okay? Any company that delays or mishandles the grievances by the data principals thereby violates its obligation, okay? Because the data protection board is already operational under rule number 20 and 21, and such a violation may lead to penalties under this act. So the board assesses penalties, taking into account the nature and gravity of the violation, type of data involved, its duration, and what were the preventive and responsive measures taken by the organization to stop the breach, and to the impact on the users, which is the data principal, right? So
Hmm.
even today, a data fiduciary could be penalized for inadequate security measures, misuse of personal data, mishandling of personal data, deficient and incorrect notices, invalid consent, or delayed grievance handling. Okay, so that is again on today. The Act's penalty structure, that allows fines up to 250 crores. So it's a huge fine.
Are companies already required to refresh consent journey and notices?
Yes, because of the rule number 2, now the definitions have been defined again, right? The consent definition has been defined again, and the role of a consent manager, data fiduciary are now officially defined and enforceable. So basically, all the notices that the organizations had, the data fiduciaries had, they must match now with the DPDP definitions. Okay, now their consent must be clear, specific, and documented, and there has to be a opt-out mechanism as well. Okay, and children's data must be verified also, and proper consent has to be taken from the guardian also. So all these are basically changing the consent journey. If your current banner form or privacy
Hmm.
policy are not aligned with these definitions, so it will create an enforcement related issue for your organization. Okay.
Okay. With Rule 17 to 21 active now, what's immediate action should companies take?
This is the most important question if anybody is watching. What is the immediate action for organizations now? So every data fiduciary, every organization that is dealing with personal data, they need to have some minimum viable DPDP setup ready now on their part. Okay, that means what? That means appointing a grievance officer, appointing a data protection officer if you are a significant data fiduciary. Okay, creating a compliant handling workflow for handling any grievances. Okay, updating your privacy notices, updating your privacy policies, fixing any consent related issues like we already discussed in the last question that you had, aligning any vendor contacts,
Hmm.
and training internal teams for all these things, because these obligations are already enforceable under rules of 17 to 21. They should also start identifying what are the high risk processing data that they are processing, and prepare a breach response plan also. Okay, even through detailed obligations will come later on. However, the organization have to start implementing at least these basic measures. Okay, because the enforcement has already started, so these basics implementation should now be there actually.
Okay. What happen if a company says we will start in 3 months?
Now companies cannot say that they will be starting in 3 months or 6 months from now, because I mean the rules are already enforced, right? Rules are live now. So now a user can file a complaint, the board can issue a
True.
notice. Yeah, the penalties can be imposed if the organizations are not doing something about it, right? So non compliance has already started since 13th of November 2025, and now it will become very legally risky for any organization who is now further trying to delay this.
And it's my last and very important question for the organization who are watching. How should companies prepare without panicking?
They should follow a structure, I should say, Vidya, because all this is new for the organizations, also for the data fiduciary also. We do understand, right? So in the week one, what you do basically, you map all your data workflows. Okay, where are your data flows happening? Create data flow diagrams. Okay, create data flow processes. Identify what all personal data are you collecting, what all types of personal data are you collecting. Okay, that is the first thing that you need to do in the week one. And fix your compliance notices. If you have any notices right now, just fix them as per the new definitions. This is the week one work. Okay, then in week two, you basically have to start correcting the consent mechanism. Okay, and build your grievance redressal workflow. Like how exactly will you handle the grievance, what exactly will be the escalation challenge, the channels, how will you do the grievance handling. All these things you need to do in the week number two. Then in the week number three, you need to align the vendor contracts and prepare your breach response playbook. Okay, even though the detailed breach rules will come later, but you should start the preparation now. Okay, you can't wait for that. Okay, so then after that, the in the fourth week, you train your internal teams and document all the evidence of compliance with the rules which are active. Okay, and having some sort of a clear planning like this week wise would be, I think, very beneficial for any organization that is actually, you know, uh, okay. So somebody has a question. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
In 1 week, identifying all the data elements is very difficult, isn't it?
That is so true, and I completely agree with you. It's not a week's task for small organizations, like for people who are like in a startup. Let's say for any organization less than 10 people, I think minimum it will take 15 to 20 days, right? So by week one, I mean, you understand the approach, and by that approach you design the timeline as per your organization. Definitely for a big organization, like an organization that has more than 10,000 employees, even I think 2 months will not be sufficient to identify all the data elements, identify all the data workflows. So yeah, so that is right, but the approach
True,
should be
it's
there.
it's just a basic, I guess, roadmap, and every
Yeah,
organization have to. Yeah, it would be flexible, right?
yeah, exactly. It's just to give you an idea actually, like how you
Hmm.
can plan it. Yeah.
Okay. And at the end of this podcast, you would like to say something to the organization and to viewers?
See, Vidya, all this is new, like consent mechanisms, privacy notices, having a proper response planning for any incident, having a proper setup of the all these things. So basically, I would say for any organization that is starting in this journey, definitely feel free to get in touch with us and try to have some understanding of these things if you do not have any idea. Because thinking that we'll do it in the next quarter, maybe in the next year, see, data breach can happen today also. And if
True.
you are dealing with a huge amount of personal data, trust me, you will be into a lot of issues later on. Okay, if the news comes out. So that is where I think it's now, like the one question that you had, right? Where can be delayed for 3 months. Now you can't. Now I would not suggest to delay it for 3 weeks also. Forget about 3 months. Okay, so because it's already live now, the rules are
Yeah.
there, and some people are thinking that the rules are yet to come after 1 year also, 1.5 year also. See, all that is there, Vidya. But at the end of the day, even if the rules are coming after 1 year, still you have to do something for that, right? You can't wait for those rules to come. Those are clarifications which will come after 1 year, okay? But you have to start implementation from day one. That should be the approach for an organization, right? So that is the crucial part. I think organizations now have to understand and start preparing towards it, and don't think that more clarity will come later, we'll see what needs to be done later on. The reason why they have given you clear definitions is the biggest hint why the government wants you to now start, because they have given you clear definitions of each and everything. That means itself they want you to start now.
Okay, thank you so much. And that brings us to end of this podcast. Sorry, end of this episode. Podcast is not ending now. Today we broke down why Rule 1, 2, and 1721 of DPDP rules are not future obligation. They are live, enforceable, and applicable from the day. If your organization hasn't started updating definition, notification, consent flow, grievances, detail, breach readiness, and foundational governance requirements, the clock has already started. At Cyber GRC, we are committed to helping businesses adopt DPDP the practical way through real life examples, template assignments, and implementation workflow that actually works in an Indian context. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to share this episode and follow this episode and stay updated with our upcoming deep dive on DPDP, ISO 42001, ISO 27001, and more. Till then, stay compliant, stay secure. This is Vidya. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, everyone who is watching.